It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, sport, showbiz and beyond. Tonight, a true national sporting heroine. Fatima Whitbread, MBE, broke the javelin world record with a throw of 77.44 metres in the qualifying round of the 1986 European Championships in athletics, where she also won the final. And she became world champion in 1987. Her colossal success with a long, sharp stick led to her being voted winner of the BBC Sports Personality of the Year award. She's also a two-time Olympic medalist, winning bronze at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics and silver at the 1988 Seoul Olympics. Her world record throw makes her one of only two women in history to have thrown the original design of a javelin over 75 metres, one of just two women in history. Fatima prevailed after a very tough start in life, in which she grew up in a series of children's homes, occasionally being left in the care of her abusive biological mother. In a 2003 interview with the Observer newspaper, she said it was a nightmare of a childhood, and it was only because I loved sport so much that I got through it and met my true mother. At the age of 14, Fatima was adopted by the family of Margaret Whitbread, her javelin coach. For Fatima Whitbread's fame and popularity, well, it goes beyond the boundaries of sport. She's been a fixture on the box in shows like Total Wipeout, Celebrity Come Dine With Me, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, The Cube, Pointless. And she came that close to being Queen of the Jungle when she came runner-up in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. But as always, she made it onto the podium. I'm delighted to say that Fatima Whitbread, MBE, joins me now. Hi, Fatima.
How are you doing, Mark? It's nice to be here.
Look, it's a thrill and a privilege to have you on the show. Were you born, do you think, with a particularly gifted set of genes in terms of your physical prowess? Were you a natural athlete?
Some would say I was natural, only long after I decided that sport was going to, became my saviour. As a youngster, I was quite talented in as much that I used to play football with the boys, throw the cricket ball, and also climb up trees, but more of a tomboy, I guess. But as far as sport goes, I wasn't naturally gifted, although I had talent, but a lot of it was hard work as well towards the end. And I think to be an achiever in anything, whether it's sport, whatever it is, you have to put the time and effort in. And I certainly did that.
How old were you, Fatima, when you had your first taste of competitive sport?
I was, let me see. I had to be around about 9 or 10 years old. We were throwing cricket rounders balls in the back of the school with the PE teacher, and it was then I discovered perhaps I had a bit of talent for throwing because I beat the boys. So it was told to me, "Oh, you've got a bit of talent, so you should carry on with doing that." But it's hard because. Spending the first 14 years of my life in children's homes was never ideal anyway. And for me, it was always difficult because emotionally I was quite disturbed, so I didn't really get into my academic work. So it sort of put me aside in as much that I was always apart from friends and struggling at school. So I then started with netball and then hockey, and I became quite good at that. Worked really hard and then brought the team together and became team captain. So I was motivating my peers, really. So that gave me the opportunity of being on level terms with them. And, of course, confidence grows and then you start believing in yourself. And then one or two people at the children's home, Mrs. Pete, actually, my auntie Pete, was the one that said to me, this is the way forward for you. You can make something of yourself here. And it wasn't until 1972 when I saw Mary Peters. I was only 11 years old at the time, at the Moscow Olympics. She won what was then the pentathlon, which is now called the heptathlon. And I realised then perhaps maybe that's the way forward for me, to do sport, to find myself in a children's home, not knowing where I was going, the only real way forward for me was to be successful in sport and perhaps carve a life out for myself. That's really what happened. I suppose sport was my saviour. And it was, I tell you, Mark, I actually met my adoptive mother through sport. In fact, she was a PE teacher at St Chad's School, and our school, Torrals, we were playing a league match and it was quite close, and it was going 11-11, 12-11, all. And my voice was heard above all. And of course, the whistle went and the umpire said, "Young lady, keep that noise down or you'll be off." And of course, me being me, kept motivating my team and wanting to win. The whistle went again. She said, "I'm not telling you any more. If there's any more from you, young lady," she said, "you'll be off." And I sort of muttered as I turned, and their team captain, Donna, said to me, "Fats, don't. She's very strict. She will send you off." So I kind of sort of got on with it, motivating my team at a lesser level. Anyway, we won, thankfully. Yay!
Of course.
But it was the end of the netball season, and the athletic season was about to begin. And I said to one of my friends, Alma, who lived in the children's home around the corner, "How about we go to Blackshots?" I said, and go to the athletic club there, which is a 5-mile walk. We probably pocketed the bus money and spent it on sweets or something. But we went to the track, and when we got there, Alma went off to the sprinters, and I could see in the far distance a tall blonde guy throwing what looked like a spear, a stick in your words. And I thought, I'm going to go over there. So off I went. And I went to pick the javelin up, and he said, "Oh, no, you can't do that." So I said, "Why not?" So he said, no. And he turned to the coach for the shot put, Jack Grinney, and he said, "Jack, can you look after this young lady? She's trying to pick my javelins up and throw them." So Jack took me over to the stadium stands. He said, "No," he said, "you're going to have to wait here," he said, "young lady," he said, "for the javelin coach to come along." He said, "And when she comes along, I'll introduce you to her, and perhaps she'll let you have a go."
And what a moment to lose Fatima. We're going to reconnect with her. What a story. I've got to say, a truly inspirational person. Well, with me in the studio is a fellow Olympian. It's Chris Akabusi. And Chris, we're just going to get a camera ready for you. But what are your emotions as you hear Fatima's story? Because, of course, you and your brother were left to fend for yourselves. You were actually in care homes for a number of years before joining the army at the age of 16. There are strong parallels in your stories, aren't there?
Yeah, indeed. I didn't really know that story listening to Fatima, how deeply we are connected in that sort of experience. But the first thing I loved when I saw Fatima come on screen was that great big winning smile. I was in the same team as Fatima, and that smile, we saw that a lot, and it's just great to see her optimism and encouragement. But yes, the children's home was for me, actually, I had a good time in the children's home, so I won't denigrate that.
Yeah.
It's the only thing about the children's home is that that you don't really belong there. There's people of all sorts of walks, colours, creeds, orientations, different backgrounds, etc. And so there's no homogenous sort of culture. And it was in the children's home where I decided I wanted to get rid of my name. My name was Kizi to Kizia, which is a beautiful Igbo name. And I changed it to Chris because I wanted to fit in, because in the home I was standing out as an anomaly. But basically I was really, really happy because I felt safe, secure, and I had a place to belong in the children's home. So, listening to Fatima's story there, I can understand that little rascally nature that she developed in the children's home and how she developed this relationship with her mum. Margaret Whitbread and her and Fatima were always together and was a close-knit unit, and you just saw them rise up through the ranks and become world champion in 1987. So, yeah, brilliant story.
It's a wonderful story. Well, I'm delighted to say we've got the line back to Fatima Whitbread. And Fatima, just incredible parallels.
Look at that smile again.
Look at the two of you together. I mean, I'm properly starstruck. We've gone double Olympian now. I'm being spoiled rotten. Fatima, your story and that of Chris are remarkably similar, real parallels.
Yes, I mean, obviously, Chris is with that remarkable smile as well, Chris. Happy smiling face of yours. It was great to see someone like Chris on the circuit when we were competing, because he kept things light, and it was a nice opportunity when you think the stress and strain that comes and the pressures with top flight international sport. I mean, each childhood's different, I guess, and I think for me it was always a struggle because 14 years of being incarcerated, I don't think that the house parents, unfortunately, were too young to understand the emotional turmoils of what was going on with us young people. And it was we had an uncle, actually, it was more like a Hitler, so it wasn't an easy time for any of us. I felt that my childhood was pretty much snatched away from me, but my lucky opportunity came when, as I say, I was at the athletic club, and I was waiting in the stand for the javelin coach to come along, and this mini pulled up very fast. And as this person got out and started walking across the field, I started looking and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's that same person on the netball court, the umpire. And of course, as she came up to the stand, Mr. Grenier introduced myself, and she said, oh, I don't need to know who you are. She said, you're Fatima, aren't you? Well, she said, young lady, any more cheek like what I got on the netball court, she said, and you definitely won't be throwing any javelins up here. So I sort of clasped my hands and I said, oh, please, I'll behave myself. I'd like to have a go. And from that point on, really, I mean, my life started to change around, and it was a few weeks later, she kept saying, you've got a bit of talent, she said, young lady. She said, ask your mum and dad to come up, she said, and I'll talk to them about some kit. So I just nodded my head. And a few weeks later, she asked Jack, she said, has Fatima got a problem with her hearing? So Jack said, no, why? Well, she said, I keep asking her to ask mum and dad to come up, but all she does is nod her head. So he said, he said, don't you know she lives in the children's homes? So with that, a few weeks later, she brought up a javelin and some boots and she threw them down. She said, those boots, she said, they're a couple of sizes too big, she said, but stuff them with paper. She said, and you'll have a nice pair of boots to throw with. And she said, and I had a young girl that's retired, she said, so here's a javelin. So that day, I couldn't wait to get back to the children's home to show the German student who was looking after us kids during the summer season when house parents were away. And so I decided to get on the bus to go back quicker. And it wouldn't happen now, obviously. They wouldn't let you on with a javelin. But the bus driver turned up, the doors opened, and he went. And I went...
You're not going to say no to that?
Lady, get on the back of the bus, he said, and behave yourself.
Brilliant.
When I got to the home, I actually showed Ingrid how I'd throw this javelin. Very quick story, Mark. I smashed the French window, sadly, and Ingrid held her head in her hands, shaking it, saying, oh no, you're going to be in dead trouble now, because that's the way it was with the house parents. So when they came back, they gave me a month ban. And everybody started saying in the schools, events, like different schools, oh, Mrs. Whitbread thinks you bunked off with the javelin and the boots and sold them and you're not going to come back again. So I then got up very early one morning in the children's home and went downstairs to the bureau, and I took out in my ignorance an airmail envelope, and I put, Dear Mrs. Whitbread, sorry I can't come up to throw the javelin at the moment, only I smashed the French window and I can't come out. I said, but one day I want to be the best javelin thrower in the world. So I stuck it down and I put Mrs. Whitbread, St. Chad School. So as I went to school that next morning, I popped it in the post box. And of course, it took a couple of weeks, but Mrs. Whitbread then started getting on the house parents' cases. And fortunately for me, I was able to get back to throwing ways. And that really was the start of the new young Whitbread.
And tell me about the length of time, the duration, that timeline between the first time you met Margaret Whitbread and the moment that at the age of 14 she adopted you. How old were you when you first met her?
It was 14 when I went to the family. My brothers only know me as Big Sis because Greg was 4 and Kirk was 2. Sadly, my father is no longer alive. He passed away a couple of years ago. It was, I guess, in the summer of that year, that same year I met her, she asked me, would I like to come and meet the family and would I like to have tea with them? So I said, yeah, that would be great. And of course, I remember playing piggyback with the boys in the garden and got on very well with the family. And my mum said, oh, would you like some salad? I said, yeah, I love salad. That's what we had. And she said, what about beetroot? I said, beetroot? What's beetroot? But I can remember being excited about everything. And then she said, well, how about if you come and stay for a couple of weeks during the summer season? And so I went to stay for a few weeks. And then not long after that, I think the ball was set in motion to see whether or not I was able to go and live with the Whitbread family.
So it all happened within a year?
It happened very quickly, and it was the best thing that's happened. But at the same time, I think it was a difficult transitional period for everybody, because nothing just clicks into place like that.
No, and you were institutionalised. I guess you were institutionalised up until that point.
Yes. Exactly, Mark. You get institutionalised, and that's the difference between children's homes today, because I've been working with Action for Children, their new campaign, and started that off this year. It's called A Star in Every Child. And what's fantastic about that is that they have definitely got a grip on what it is to have, to look after children and get the right carers involved. Whereas ours were very functional. It was just a job for our young people, and they didn't have the understanding or whereabouts of what it was involved with young emotional children, disadvantaged kids. But the star in my life in the children's home, actually, if I've got to be honest, was a lady called Auntie Pete. She was a 72-year-old lady, and she came in and she looked after all of us kids. And I can remember one occasion I picked some daffodils which were around the street, and I went to Mrs. Pete was a Cockney lady, and I could see her if I was up on the staircase, in the middle of the staircase, looking out the port window. I could hear her coming up with her shoes, and I could watch her going back home. I knew exactly at the end of the road where her house was. So I took these daffodils and I went up to the door and knocked on the door, and I waited for it to open. And when she answered the door, I said, "Will you be my mummy?" And of course, she said, "Fat," she said, "come on round," she said, "come and have a cup of tea and a biscuit." And I still love tea and biscuits to this day. And she said, look, she explained to me, look, I've got to be mum to all those children in homes. She said, but I can't always be there. She said, but what you can do, she said, is be mum when I'm not there, she said. And what she taught me then was, in giving, you receive. And it's very true, you become selfless. You become unravelled in your own head, because we all imprison ourselves in there. And you become more of a giver, and I think you receive more that way. And for me, it was the best thing I could do, looking after those young kids, giving them a lot of love and receiving it. So that helped me greatly. And I remember my first netball medal, which was the netball match that I met my mother now, Margaret. That medal I actually gave to Mrs. Pete, because it was Mrs. Pete that, in my childhood days in the children's home, that was the mother that I would have loved, and she was the one that supported me throughout my childhood and encouraged me in my sport as well. So kind of and sadly she's passed away now, but yeah, I was fortunate to have an inspirational person in my younger years as well.
Yes, and your story is one of resilience and of survival and triumphing over such difficult circumstances, Fatima. You were pretty much abandoned as a baby, and I think it was only an attentive neighbour that actually stopped you from passing away.
Yes, I mean, I was abandoned as a baby. I was bondaged up and left in a cot in a flat, Mateus Road in Hackney, and a neighbour heard the baby crying and saw nobody coming and going. So, of course, she called the police, and they banged the door down, rescued that baby and took it to Beardsmuir Memorial Hospital, which is no longer there now. But it was during that time I spent 6, 7, 8 months with malnutrition and nappy rash, and they made me a ward of court with Hackney Borough Council. And it was from there I went to Hertfordshire in the first children's home, where there was 25 children. And I spent the first 5 years of my life. unfortunately, nobody explained to me about my childhood. So I was living in a bit of a turmoil, really. I'm not knowing where I fitted in. And, of course, didn't have any visits like Christmas or birthday or anything like that. And then at 5 years old, I was told, Fatima, meet me downstairs in the reception and be ready at 9 o'clock because your mum and your social worker are coming to take you to live in the new children's home where your half brother and sister are going to be. So I kind of couldn't get my head around this. I mean, who does them anyway? It's 5 years old, it's very difficult. And I was getting exceptionally emotional about it because obviously that was my home and the children there were my family. So it was a difficult period of time.
Indeed. Well, looking at the positives, you prevailed over all of that. You've become a national celebrity, a national treasure, an Olympian. Tell me about your emotions when you performed at the highest level and when you represented your country and you stood on the podium.
Well, they're the most fantastic years as a sports person. I think the 80s were, as Chris probably will agree, because track and field for the first time ever topped even football. We were the number one sport. And we had some great sportsmen and women in British sport. We had even in snooker, Steve Davis. You had Eric Bristow in darts. You had Woosnam and Fowler in golf. You had Mansell in motor racing. It's endless. You had Gooch and Gattin in cricket. So for me, it was the golden years, the 80s. And to be able to come away as a champion amongst champions like we had and win the BBC Sports Personality of the Year Award in 1987, only to be topped by being given the MBE by the Queen, which was fantastic when you consider it's Jubilee year this year. Happy birthday, Mum. It was fantastic to be able to stand up amongst giants like that because, from a long way back, looking from the humble beginnings to standing on the number one rostrum will always be a very special feeling.
Think of a greater story, Fatima. You're a remarkable human being, and it should inspire anyone that's watching, and I know it will. And the same goes for you, Chris Akabusi. I'm humbled to have both of you in the same conversation. Do you think, Chris, that what you went through, which is, of course, appalling and deeply regrettable, and you deserved a happy, idyllic childhood, but you didn't get one. Did that difficult start in life give you resilience? And is there a connection, Chris, between the success you had and what you went through as a child?
So look, my start is my start, and I don't get down on my time as a children's home. I cried every day from 4 to 14, then took responsibility for my life, played the clown at school. For me, my Margaret was Sergeant Mackenzie when I was 16 and a half and I joined the army. And he was one who turned me towards a gift I had inside of myself that didn't need to be clownish, that didn't need to ingratiate people by doing bad things, that actually if I dedicated myself, worked hard, I could do great things in track and field athletics. It took me 5 years before I joined Fatima and the British team, but from 79 to 84, worked hard, and late 1984 was my first games where Fatima was Olympic silver medalist, I think. It was Olympic silver medalist, was it, Fatima?
That's true, yeah. Chris,
so,
it's always been a pleasure to compete alongside you. It was a wonderful experience, always laughing.
Yes.
your happy, smiling face.
Was he always such a natty dresser as well? He's a clothes horse.
Look at Fatima, she looks sweet, man. Look at sweet.
Eubanks going on somewhere.
Listen, Fatima, you are, not just a great Olympian, but you're a very beautiful lady as well. And of course, you've done lots of telly, not just throwing the javelin, but you've become a bit of a national treasure. You were in the jungle. You did I'm a Celebrity. You almost won it. I would imagine that experience was a walk in the park for you compared to those other soft celebrities.
Yeah, actually.
Was it? Fatima, no, for me, the picture I've got, Fatima, is you in that tank with that bug climbing up your nose. And I couldn't believe it. You were so calm and collected. I was doing one for you, but you was calm and collected. That wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy, but at the same time, I mean, what are you going to do? It's there, so you have to
Fatima, there's a lot more to come from you. I know that. You're very involved in Action for Children, which is a brilliant charity. actionforchildren.org.uk is their website. A Star in Every Child is their campaign that you're part of. Finally, and of course we could talk to you for hours, please come and join us in the studio when Chris is here next time. But
definitely.
What would you say life has taught you the most?
Self-growth, really. I think I do feel I'm more of a spiritualist than I was, 20, 30 years ago. I do believe, but at the same time, I think experiences are there to learn something from. My athletics career was wonderful, but I far more enjoyed the journey of it than actually winning the gold medals. I mean, the gold medals are only there to say that you actually achieved, but the real achievement was the journey. And for me, self-growth is the most important thing. We can always learn to the day we die. So, and giving back and helping others, so important.
And how about you, Chris? What has life taught you so far?
Well, I love that idea that Fatima's talking about being and becoming, that, you don't stand static. I mean, it was Muhammad Ali who said the person at 50 who thinks and he's the same as he was at 20 has wasted 30 years. And so just hearing Fatima talking about that growth, being and becoming, and embracing each moment because they have a beauty of their own. So, like Fatima, I had a phenomenal athletic career. I've had a beautiful life, but I enjoy my here and now. I've got a lovely family. I play golf. I come up when I see you on the TV. I'm just loving my life. So, I like that idea, Fatima. Continual growth and development.
The greatest privilege.
Can I just say one more thing?
Go for it, Fatima.
I would just I know my friends watching and my son and my family, so I'd just like to say hello to all of them. Susan, Joanne and my son Ryan, and obviously my mother Margaret. So just like to say thank you for being a support to me over the years. It's not often you get that opportunity to thank people. So if they're still awake, that is, thank you very much. And I should be off now to bed because it is well past my bedtime.
Yeah, it's a bit late for an athlete, isn't it? Well, you're clearly an amazing mum and an amazing daughter. Fatima Whitbread, do come and see us in the studio next time you're in London. Fatima Whitbread, MBE. And my thanks to the brilliant Chris Akabusi for joining that conversation.